Hey guys, Alex here. This video is going to be a video response to Sanders Robbins 24 video about role models in wrestling. I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I just kind of like made a list of 20 wrestlers in no particular order, except for I made sure number one was kind of one important. You know, the top ones were kind of big. Basically, wrestlers that I think are good role models and kind of people that I admire in wrestling, and basically people that I think are just, you know, good people in general in wrestling. So let's just start the list here with number 20, Edge. Edge for me is just a guy who really showed what hard work and determination can be. He started out at the bottom of the barrel, working, you know, dark matches, you know, kind of not really doing anything special. Became the biggest name in tag team wrestling in the 90s and the early 2000s. Broke out into a single superstar. I didn't really do much in his mid-card career. He had a few moments here and there, but then he got a run with the world title and he ran with it, and he became easily probably one of the biggest superstars of the late 2000s. Maybe even one of the best. So I give credit to the guy for being just a guy who worked his ass off to get to the top and really showed what hard work could do for you. And I gotta respect that for the guy. And also, I think the guy's always been very humble about being very big, you know, and I really respect the guy, and I think a lot of people get more respect for him for being willing to walk away with his head held high, you know, not bitching and complaining about it, just saying, listen, you know, I gotta retire, but hey, you know, I'd rather retire than, you know, leave than, you know, end up in a wheelchair. I respect the guy a lot for that, for making the right decision. Even, I don't know if it was his part. I think obviously it wasn't his decision, but you know, he could have been very, very upset about that, but he didn't. He just said he just walked away, and always been very humble, I think, in my opinion. Next, I had Chris Jericho. Again, just like Edge, Jericho is just a guy that worked his ass off. I read his book, both of them actually, and you know, it's incredible the kind of lengths this guy went to. You know, from working in Japan and in Germany and Europe and Canada, and just learning all these different things from the different companies and really putting them to use, to being basically useless on WCW and like having to do things on his own, basically, where he said, like, you know, he had to come up with ideas and do them himself, and because no one else was going to give him anything to do. So again, that's, you know, very determined right there. And then, you know, having to like making this big debut in WWE, having it not really work out the way he planned on it, but just kept going and taking every chance he had, every bad storyline he said, like, okay, I'll make this work my way. And you know, now he's, you know, probably one of the biggest stars in WWE right now. Definitely a big name for wrestling fans on the internet. You know, again, I gotta respect the guy just for hard work. You know, that's really one reason I can respect the guy is just for what he's done and how much work he put into it. So, next I had Shawn Waltman. This one might be a little bit controversial. For me, Shawn has always been a great worker. 1, 2, 3 Kid was, you know, X-Pac, whatever you want to call him. Back in the 90s, he was probably an innovator back in his day. But really, one thing that really made me respect the guy a lot more was recently when I see some of his interviews. I saw his match at King of Trios, like, where he's really come to peace with all the bad things he's done, all the mistakes he's made. He's accepted them. He's moved on. He's never cut any corners about what he did. He never lied. He's very, very open about what happened, with like his drug problem, his suicide attempt, and you know, he's very much, you know, he's an open book about it. He'll talk about it. You know, he'll announce, yeah, I made mistakes. I learned from them. And I think a lot of people can respect that from the guy, for manning up about it and, like, you know, taking responsibility for mistakes and, you know, not, you know, making BS excuses. So that's one reason I really would look up to the guy, because he's the person who's, you know, made mistakes, owned up to them, and come back and done, you know, great things. So very, very, you know, much respect to the guy for being willing to do that, especially talk about a suicide attempt. That's, you know, really a personal thing, but for him to be very open about it and talk about it, that's really, that takes a lot of courage. Next, I had Eddie Kingston. Eddie, for me, has always been a very, like, I think he's got a lot of I don't know how to say this. always got a bad reputation. Like I think a lot of people look at him as a mean person, but I think Eddie's always been a great guy. Again, I think the fact that he's helped build Chikara from the ground up, has done a lot for this company. Has showed respect to these big names, and he's really given his life to this business, and like really has committed himself to it. Again, I respect the guy for his commitment level. Plus, losing a friend like Larry Sweeney, that was a big deal for him. And I think the fact that he took such a hard moment in his life and really turned it into something kind of a positive. Like he used that as motivation to work harder, to didn't use it as a reason to get into depression and everything. So that I like that a lot. I think that he again I just respect the guy's level of commitment and work ethic and everything he's done for this company. So just another name that just respect the guy for what he's done. Then I have Greg Irons. For those who don't know, Gregory Iron has cerebral palsy in his right hand, which basically means he has like no function in his right hand, and yet this guy is still a competitive wrestler, and he's not a bad wrestler. Actually, he's pretty good. He's working for Chikara and some other smaller independent promotions, but again, I can really respect a guy who is so determined to be a professional wrestler, so driven to be a professional wrestler, that he's not going to let anything stand in his way, not even the fact that he has cerebral palsy and cannot use his right hand. Gotta respect a guy for that. I mean, that is really, really impressive. And the fact that he doesn't let anything hold him back, he doesn't make excuses if something goes wrong. He says to himself like, okay, well, what can I do? He doesn't use the handicap as an excuse. He uses that. He just he tries to live a normal life. And I think he's a motivation and a role model for anyone with a handicap or a disability. And just to say, like, listen, don't let anything stop you from accomplishing your dreams. And a very nice guy, too. I've talked to him. He's a very, very nice guy. Very approachable and easy to talk to. Really enjoyed talking to him a couple times. Then I had Davey Richards. The reason I put Davey here is because now, some people might not like Davey now, and, I can agree. I can understand why. But for me, Davey is one of those guys that has always been about putting the wrestling business first. He's done a lot for this company. He's always been very open about how much he respects and admires the fans. He thanks the fans after shows. He puts over guys. He talks highly about people. But really, for me, the thing that I like about him the most, and the thing I respect about him, was that after he won the ROH World Title, he talked about how this moment was for his grandparents, and how he had promised his grandparents that he was going to win the world title for them. And for me, that is really great. I like a guy who, shows, is really open with his family. It talks about his family life. And for me, that was a really touching moment that night. And like the fact that he's like been open about his personal issues, about his fiance leaving him, about all this stuff, and that he's used that as motivation to just keep working and keep being better. Again, respect the guy's work ethic and for what he's done for the business, especially in Ring of Honor. I think he has helped Ring of Honor push itself to the next level, and I think now Ring of Honor can start looking at new guys like Kevin Steen to get to the next level. Next I have Nigel McGuinness. Nigel is a very is one of those guys that he will give 100% every single night. Back in the day when he was an ROH champion, he drew a lot of heat because he was injured a lot. He'd get hurt because he would, wrestle at such a pace that, like, once in a while he would get injured and he refused to vacate the title because he didn't want to be a quitter. He wanted to keep holding that title. He wanted to defend it. He wanted to work. So I respect that, and I also respect the guy because he went to TNA. He did a great job, and then like a medical issue prevented him from wrestling. And instead of moping around and being sorry for himself, he said, okay, listen, I'm gonna do a retirement tour. I'm gonna go back to Ring of Honor. I'm gonna help them. I'm gonna, be a commentator, blah 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 blah. And then I'm gonna put my story out there as a documentary, and I'm gonna help get talk about my wrestling life and help inspire more people to follow my career path. Be wrestlers. And I respect the guy for doing something like that. I respect a guy that is willing to say, like much like Edge, like just similar to say, like, okay, if I can't wrestle at the 100% like I can, then I'm not gonna feel sorry for myself. I'm gonna do something positive with it, and that's great, I think. And I did support his Kickstarter program, and I got my an 8x10 for him actually. And I just respect the guy for everything he's done, for how hard of a worker he was back in his prime. And, despite all the injuries, despite all the bumps he took, he never quit. Yeah, he took time off, but he would not let that stop him from being the champion. And, respect the guy for all again, like a lot of these guys, I'm gonna be saying this a lot. I respect the guys for all they've done. So just get used to that, I'm sorry. But just the determination he's had and like the love for the business he's had, it really shines. He really has a passion for this business, and I give it up to that guy for that. Then we have an obvious one, Daniel Bryan. I think Daniel Bryan is probably one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time, if not one of the best. Just there's not much I can say about this guy. The guy that hasn't already been said. The guy works at such a great effort. He was ROH champion just as for about as long as Nigel McGuinness was, I think. And during that time, he actually suffered from injuries, but he did not take time off. He kept working through injuries. Suffered a detached retina during a match with Takeshi Morishima. Kept wrestling. Didn't want to let the fans down. I also got to give the guy respect for doing this whole thing with WWE, where he was fired basically as a way to save face for the WWE. And instead of giving him a hard time, he could have gone and left to some other company. He didn't. He said, "Okay, listen, I'll do my 30 days or whatever, and then I'll come back, or 90 days, I guess, whatever. And I'll come back, and I'm gonna prove why I deserve my spot back. And until the time, I'm gonna do my ring up. I'm gonna do indie shows. I'm gonna put over independent wrestling, and I'm gonna tell them just keep supporting." So I like that he, with his free time, he went around to every single big promotion, except for Ring of Honor, I think. I don't think he went to Ring of Honor. He went to PWG, he went to Chikara, he went to Dragon Gate, and he basically said, support independent wrestling, support these companies, wherever I go, no matter what. So I like the guy that he shows, he's very humble to his roots. He wants independent wrestling to succeed because that's where he came from. He shows he hasn't turned his back on his true fans. He's embraced the new fans from WWE, but he keeps true to the fans back from when he was an ROH champion. And also, the guy's a vegan. He's a role model for kids. He shows that, like, hey, listen, you don't have to be these big buff muscular motherfuckers like other guys. You can be a skinny guy, and it's just but if you can work hard, you can be just as tough as one of those guys. So I love Daniel Bryan. I think he's great. Then I have a 12 is just one for me, Jim Cornette. For me, Jim Cornette has just always been a voice of reason in wrestling. He's always been that guy that has been very outspoken about something that's his opinion. And for me, I love a guy that speaks his opinion. If a guy is willing to say what he's on his mind, fuck what everyone else cares. You don't like my opinion, too bad. And really, for me, I've always taken that to heart. I've said things on my Facebook page to friends, on YouTube, that it's like, if you don't like it, too bad. It's my opinion. Deal with it. And I respect a guy that is willing to speak his mind and be controversial, because if that's his opinion, he's not trying to make people hate him. He's not trying to get people to like him. He's just saying his opinion. So again, I like a guy that is willing to speak his mind and say things that he believes are true. So Jim Cornette has always been a very popular guy with me. I actually have his YouTube videos. I have a signed autograph from him. I got to meet him. Very nice guy. Love Jim Cornette. Next, I have the Undertaker. Undertaker. What more can you say about this guy? he's a guy who has been at the company in the company since the very first episode of Raw. Is still with the company. Has absolutely highest level of respect, in my opinion, just because of all he's done, all the work he's done, all the people he's helped in his time, people he's put over, the matches he's had, what he's done to his body and what he continues to do, despite his age, despite his fatigue, despite his many injuries. He keeps doing it just because he wants the fans to go home happy, especially at WrestleMania. Gotta respect the guy for that. And also, Undertaker's always been one of those guys you hear backstage stories about, like how if someone is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, he will put his foot down and say, "You don't do that." I think he's one of those guys that has taught respect to other members of the newer generations and is really focused on putting respect into people, and I like that a lot. Okay, I'm trying to hurry this up now because I'm running a little long. Number 10, Kevin Steen. For me, Kevin Steen, I like the guy a lot just because I actually got to meet, one thing that really stood on my mind was I got to meet the guy, and he didn't charge you to meet him. He didn't charge you for a picture. He didn't charge you for an autograph. He just said, "Hey, you're fans, come here, come meet me, whatever." Automatically that makes me a fan of a guy who's just willing to meet the fans and talk to them. He, a lot of people came over there. He just sat there and talked to them. He didn't care. I like that a lot. Plus, I've heard interviews with him. He's a guy that he loves his business so much and he wants to see it improve. It's like he's willing to be a little bit controversial. Kind of like CM Punk, like where he'll say things that he believes, and it's like listen, if he sees something wrong, he wants to try to fix it because he respects the business so much, and I like that a lot. Maybe he's going about it a different way, but I think it's something that you need to, once in a while you need to do. You need to stand up and say, listen, this is something that's wrong. This needs to be fixed. Plus, I just like the guy. I think also from a guy like I'm kind of a bigger, heavier guy, and to see a guy like Kevin Steen, who's one of the best wrestlers in the world, being this big fat guy. No offense to Kevin if he ever watches this video, but he's a big fat guy, and he still doesn't give a shit. He still wrestles greatly. He still wrestles great. He's still a high flyer. He still, is one of the best in the world, and people love him despite the fact he's fat. He doesn't look like an average wrestler. So I like that. I think I like the fact that he breaks the stereotype that you need to be a skinny, muscular wrestler. Much like Daniel Bryan. Just really respect the guy for what he does and how much respect he shows to fans. Next, I have Colt Cabana. Again, Colt Cabana is just a guy who's really done it all in wrestling. He has, he's always been very humble about everything. He's always embraced the fact that he's a pro wrestler. He's had fun with pro wrestling. He's talked to fans. He's really, he's really gone the extra effort. Like, he does the Art of Wrestling podcast. He does the Creative Has Nothing For You. He really tries to get wrestling out there to fans so everyone can experience it and people can fall in love with wrestling. So he's always trying to bring more people into wrestling no matter what. Whether it's, putting on great matches, putting on funny matches, doing podcasts, doing YouTube videos. He tries to make people fall in love with wrestling, and I like that a lot because I always try to encourage my friends to give wrestling a chance. Not many of them do because they think they say it's fake, but well, fuck them. But I like Colt Cabana just because he always is trying to go the extra mile to bring more people into wrestling, and I like that a lot. Next, CM Punk. What can you say about CM Punk? The guy's straight edge. I like that a lot because I'm basically straight edge. I don't like saying I am just because I think it's a kind of a stupid label and people automatically think you're like these punk rock people. But he's a kind of he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, but and like he doesn't rub it in people's face. He just that's just what I do. Which is kind of like what I am with my friends. Like they all drink and stuff, but I just say okay, I'm not gonna drink. I'll hang out with you guys, but I'm not gonna drink anything. So I like that a lot. Been very outspoken about things. I like, like Kevin Steen. Like he's outspoken about something. If something is wrong and something he doesn't fit what he thinks is right, he'll say something. Like with the Chris Brown thing, that was a really cool thing. I thought that was very. I don't know how to say it. I think it was very good for him because you know, he's a person in power, and he says, like, listen, he sees something wrong, he's going to say something about it. And just for me, that was really cool. You know, maybe some people didn't like it because they're Chris Brown fans. Well, I'm not a Chris Brown fan, so I enjoyed it. Plus, he's a good, you know, he didn't make waves when he was a mid-card guy. You know, they give him he didn't bitch and complain about it. He was down there. He worked when he could, best he could. He tried to do the better matches he could, as good as matches he could when he had the time to. And then when he got his chance to, he showed why he deserves to be in the main event. Just really a great guy, and again, a guy who I think shows respect to the independent wrestling companies where he's come from. So I think that's another thing I like. Next, I got the Young Bucks. Young Bucks during 2011 were the biggest name in tag team wrestling, I think, right there with the Briscoes. For one reason, because they left TNA and they were almost signed to WWE, but then they had this whole thing with, like, where they were quoted as being called disrespectful. They didn't shake hands, and instead of going out and saying, "Oh, this isn't true. We were screwed out of jobs. We were treated unfairly," they just said, "Okay, listen, we're not going to let this get into us. We're just going to use this dirt sheet or whatever, and we're going to use it as motivation to get us, you know, over as heels with fans." You know, and it worked in a big way. You know, they were the biggest name in tag team wrestling in 2011, like in POG and Ring of Honor and Chikara, because of just how good of heels they were, because they used this whole, "oh, we don't shake hand" thing, you know, and it worked. So I think that they're really good at turning a negative into a positive. You know, they got denied a job, and instead of bitching and moaning, they said, "Okay, how can we make this a idea that can make us money and make us more bigger names in wrestling instead of just bitching about it?" I like that a lot. And actually, I got to meet them. Very nice guys, very dedicated to business. They both live in California, and they're willing to fly out there on planes and everything to get to all the shows and then fly back to be with their wives and kids. And I like that. I know Matt has a kid and wife. I don't know if his brother does, but you know, respect the guys for really putting in an extra effort to make it out to all the shows. So, and again, turning a negative into a positive. I like that a lot. Next, I got Johnny Gargano. For those of you who don't know, Johnny was injured in early January at the Evolve, I think it was it was Evolve 10 Tribute to the Arena show. And, like, basically he kept working this match, you know, for 25 minutes and really put out, you know, it was a good match, you know, and, you know, really gave it an extra effort. And I think that earned a lot of people's respect. You know, this guy worked through a very serious injury. He could have been crippled for life, could have had to retire. But instead of saying, "Listen, I'm hurt, I can't wrestle tonight," he said, "I cannot let the fans down. I've got to go out there no matter what, whether I'm going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I cannot let these fans down tonight." Big respect to a guy who's willing to risk his career just to entertain the people in attendance, no matter what. And, you know, you give it some credit to the guy who has worked his ass off. Started out, you know, he's said it very proudly, "I started out as a bonus match on the first DVD of Dragon Gate USA. Now I'm a world champion in the company because of the work I've done, the effort I've done." I like that a lot. I respect the guy for hard work, for determination, for coming back from a very serious injury and just not letting that slow him down the least bit. I really respect the guy for that. Next, John Cena. I don't think I have to mention why John Cena deserves to be on this list as a role model and inspiration to wrestling. I mean, the guy works his ass off. He has the biggest work rate of any wrestler I know. He basically is a 24-hour job of being John Cena. He wrestles. If he's not wrestling, he's doing interviews. If he's not doing interviews, he's doing talk shows. If he's not doing talk shows, he's doing Make-A-Wish Foundation stuff, meeting kids, meeting fans. He really gives it everything he has. It's a 24-hour job for him. He loves his work. He has a smile on his face every single night. He gives it everything he has. He doesn't take time off unless it's for very serious injuries, like a neck injury he had back in 2009, I think it was, or the pectoral muscle tear he had. But guy gives it everything he has, and I respect the hell out of the guy for that. You know, not much more you can. And also, I like the fact that, you know, people always say, "Oh, he needs to turn heel, he needs to turn heel," and he says flat out on the show, "I'm not going to be a bad guy. I'm always going to be me. If you don't like it, you can boo me, but I'm not going to change. I like that a lot. I just think that's really great. Next, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Again, a guy who's very outspoken, a guy who's really worked his ass off. I mean, again, like kind of like the Young Bucks, like he turned a negative into a positive. He was fired from WCW over the phone. He was very angry about it, obviously, but he turned that into a positive. He used that in a promo with ECW to get him majorly over, and just kind of like showed, like, you know, like, this is why you guys need me, you know, blah 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 blah. And I like that a lot. Really, you know, and he's always been a guy who's worked. Like he said, like, you know, he talked about like how when he was a rematcher, he knew like this is a stupid idea, but listen, if it helps me get my foot in the door, I'm gonna do it. So I respect a guy who's willing to bite the bullet and do what's necessary just to get his foot in the door. And then when he has that chance, then he will, you know, basically, you know, show why he deserves to be treated better. Also, respect for the guy from coming back from a broken neck. You know, that's a very dangerous injury. You know, it actually did cost him his career later on in life, but, you know, guy really did almost die, and, you know, he came back from it, so I'll give it that. Next, I got The Rock. Again, I don't think I have to say much about The Rock. I mean, guy has basically been a motivation for wrestlers all over the world because he's done so much. He's gone from wrestling, you know, being a joke almost, to being the biggest name in professional wrestling, you know, the biggest star, and then to a movie star. And now he's a big name in Hollywood. And I think that he's kind of been a trendsetter for a lot of things. He motivates people. He spends time with kids. You know, he does that stuff too. Like I like that video packet they showed him, like where he went and visited like his native homeland of Samoa. And like he was with the a school kids or whatever. I like that a lot. Again, I just think, you know, Rock has really blazed the trail and showed that, like, you know, he's not going to be happy just conquering one thing. He wants to keep conquering more and more things and keep doing more and more. And I think that's really something you can look up to. Next, Mick Foley. Mick, for me, is just a guy who I've always loved because he was this guy who was an outcast, a loser. Girls didn't like him in high school. And he didn't let that get them down. He just, you know, he kept having a smile on his face. He was absorbed in wrestling. He slept in his car to train and to go to wrestling schools. Put his body on the line to entertain the crowd. Did all this stuff, and, you know, really when he got the WWE title belt, I loved that moment as a kid. I thought that was one of the greatest moments of my childhood because, you know, like this guy who was you know, someone who's different, got a chance, and, you know, he really showed what he could do. He goes on to write a best-selling novel, a New York Times best-selling novel, writes children's stories now, does stand-up comedy, and you know, again, much like The Rock, he's never been satisfied with just doing one thing. He wants to keep doing more and more things, keep making himself known to more people, and really, you know, he donates to charity and stuff. He's a very nice guy. A family guy too. I like the guy a lot. I just think the guy's had a really rough life, but never let him get it down, never let him stop, and never let injuries stop him from doing what he wanted to do. And my last one is Shawn Michaels. Obviously, you can talk about how Shawn Michaels was an asshole early in his career. It's been documented before very well. But for me, Shawn Michaels has always just been a role model for me, just because of how good of a wrestler he was. And especially now, later in life. I mean, the guy is so humble, so respectful to everything. He's put over so many guys since he's come back. He's a different person. You know, he helps out charities now and stuff. You know, the whole born again Christian thing really, you know, has made him a different person. But for me, he's always been just a hero to me. I don't know why. You know, I think it's just because he was such a great wrestler back in the day. He was kind of the cocky heel, but when he came back, he just became such a nicer guy. And just for me, he's always just been a person I looked up to because of his work rate and for what he's done for this business and for what he is, the people he's put over, and for everything he's done. So there you have it, 20 names of wrestlers that I looked up to. Very long video. I thank you for anyone who actually watched the whole thing, because it's a very long video. But that's it for now. I will make sure to link Sanders Robbins' video in the description below so you guys can check it out. Alright, take care. Bye.